My father did not just insult me on my wedding day. He tried to erase me. He stood under crystal chandeliers in a hall filled with senators, pastors, oil executives, and society women dressed in gold lace. He lifted my grandfather's old bank passbook into the air like it was a dirty rag. Then he smiled into the microphone and said, "Trash belongs with trash." And before I could breathe, before I could think, he dropped it into a silver bucket filled with melting ice and champagne. The crowd laughed. I did not. I pushed my hand into the freezing water. Ice cut my skin. Champagne soaked my white dress. I pulled out the ruined passbook and walked out of that hall without looking back. 3 days later, I walked into a bank in Lagos and discovered my father had just thrown away 18.7 billion naira. That was the day I stopped being invisible. Hey family, before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's begin the story. My name is Sarah Peters. I was 29 years old on the day my father tried to bury me in front of Lagos society. The wedding reception was held at a luxury event center in Victoria Island. The kind of place with tall glass walls, white marble floors, and chandeliers that looked like frozen rain falling from the ceiling. Outside, the lagoon shimmered under evening lights. Inside, the room smelled of perfume, grilled fish, and expensive champagne. Everyone important in Lagos was there. Politicians, business moguls, pastors with television ministries, women wearing diamonds that could pay hospital bills for a whole year. My father, Charles Peters, moved among them like a king. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His shoes shone like mirrors. When he laughed, people laughed with him. When he raised his glass, people raised theirs. I had spent my whole life shrinking around him. Even as a child, I learned that the safest way to survive in our house in Ikoyi was to stay quiet. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child. He was loud, confident, entitled. My father said boys conquer the world. Girls clean up after them. I believed him for years. That night, just before the speeches, my grandfather, I will call him Grandpa Samuel, called me aside. His hands trembled as he pressed something small into my palm. "Keep this safe," he whispered. It was an old bank passbook. Brown cover. Edges worn. Pages yellowed with age. I didn't even open it. I slipped it into my purse. When my father asked for the microphone, the room became silent instantly. He loved an audience. He fed on it. "Family and friends," he began, smiling wide. "Tonight is about legacy." He called me up to the stage. My heart beat fast, but I walked slowly. Cameras flashed. My white dress brushed against the marble floor. Then he held up the passbook. "This," he laughed, "is what my father thinks is a wedding gift." The room waited. He grinned. "Trash belongs with trash." And he dropped it into a silver champagne bucket filled with ice. The sound of ice cracking echoed through the hall. Laughter followed. I remember the cold first. I remember the sharp pain when I pushed my hand into the bucket. The ice cut my fingers. Champagne soaked into my sleeve. My dress absorbed the liquid and clung to my legs. I pulled the passbook out. Water dripped from my arm onto the marble floor. My father looked at me with amusement. I did not cry. I did not speak. I stepped off the stage and walked out of the hall while the music struggled to start again. Behind me, I could still hear faint laughter. That was the moment something inside me changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. For 3 days after the wedding, I did not speak to my father. I did not answer his calls. I did not reply to his messages. I did not open social media. I did not want to see clips of that moment replayed online. Because I knew they would. Lagos never misses drama. My husband, Michael, stayed quiet too. That was one of the reasons I married him. He did not rush to speak. He watched. He thought. He listened. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Yaba. Not Ikoyi. Not Victoria Island. My father hated that. He called it student housing. But that apartment felt safe. The morning after the wedding, I laid the passbook flat on our dining table. The pages were wrinkled from the champagne. The ink had bled slightly but was still readable. Michael sat across from me. "Have you opened it?" he asked. I shook my head. I was afraid to. Afraid it would be empty. Afraid it would truly be trash. Afraid my father was right. Finally, I opened the first page. The account was opened in 1983. The name listed as beneficiary was mine. My hands began to shake. "Go to the bank," Michael said quietly. 3 days later, I did. The First National Bank branch in Marina stood tall and cold against the Lagos heat. The air inside was heavily air-conditioned. The marble floors were spotless. Conversations were whispers. I wore a simple coat. Nothing expensive. Nothing flashy. The passbook sat inside a clear nylon bag in my hands. When I handed it to the teller, she looked at it like it might stain her desk. "I'd like to check the balance," I said. She typed the account number. She stopped. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. She leaned closer to the screen. Her face drained of color. "Ma, please wait." Within minutes, 2 senior officials came out. They did not treat me like trash. They treated me like something important. They led me into a private room. The branch director opened a thick file. "Your grandfather opened this as a Totten trust," he explained. "He invested heavily in early foreign technology companies. He never withdrew dividends. He reinvested everything." He turned the paper toward me. 18.7 billion naira. The number did not look real. It sat on the page quietly. Heavy. I remembered the champagne bucket. My father had thrown away 18.7 billion naira because he did not bother to check inside the cover. "Is anyone else on this account?" I asked. "No. It is entirely yours." For the first time in my life, I felt something shift. Not fear. Power. That number brought back memories. I was 12 years old again. Kneeling on the hardwood floor of my father's study in Ikoyi. He had spilled his whiskey on purpose. I knew it. He knew it. But the rule in our house was simple. Boys conquer. Girls clean. Daniel was on the couch playing video games. "Sarah, you missed a spot," my father said softly. He preferred cruelty when people were watching. He enjoyed the slow humiliation. When Grandpa Samuel tried to help me up that day, my father's voice turned sharp. "Touch that cloth and I'll send you to a home." I scrubbed until my knuckles bled. That day, I learned silence. Now, sitting in the bank room, I realized something. Silence can be useful. But it can also be a weapon. That evening, I showed Michael the balance statement. He did not celebrate. He turned his laptop toward me instead. "I've been looking into your father companies," he said. Red numbers filled the screen. Loans. Bridge financing. Shell companies. "He's insolvent," Michael said calmly. "The Ikoyi mansion is in early foreclosure. The family foundation is empty. He's moving the same money between accounts to fake liquidity." I stared at the screen. My father, the powerful businessman, was drowning. "And there's more," Michael added. "FIRS sent him a notice of tax deficiency last month." He wasn't powerful. He was desperate. My phone rang. It was him. "Sarah," he said smoothly. "That small house your grandfather left you in Badagry. I'll help you sell it." The cottage. The only physical thing Grandpa Samuel left me. "I'm not selling," I said. Silence. Then his voice changed. "That old man wasn't competent. If you don't cooperate, I'll sue you for manipulation. I'll drag you to court." He wasn't protecting me. He was hunting for liquidity. "I understand," I said calmly. When I hung up, Michael smiled. "He's scared," he said. The next day, I called him back. I made my voice small. "Daddy, the passbook wasn't empty." Silence. "How much?" 18.7 billion naira. His breathing changed. "I don't know what to do," I whispered. "The bank mentioned audits. Taxes. I'm scared." Instantly, he became the savior. "Bring everything to me. I'll move it under the family trust. I'll protect you. Protect me. He wanted to swallow it whole. He invited me to a major charity gala in Abuja where he was receiving an award. Bring the documents before the speeches. He wanted an audience. He wanted glory. Michael and I did not hire a lawyer to stop him. We hired a legal strategist to draft something different. The documents looked like standard transfer forms. But they weren't. They were affidavits. By signing, my father would accept sole financial responsibility for every shell company tied to his foundation. He would legally connect himself to 20 years of hidden accounts. We prepared everything quietly. Silence again. But this time, it was sharp. The ballroom in Abuja glittered with crystal lights. Politicians. Senators. Business elites. My brother Daniel was already drunk near the bar. My father stood near the stage, glowing with confidence. When he saw me, he smiled tightly. Do you have it? Yes. I handed him the blue folder. He flipped through quickly. He did not read carefully. He only saw where to sign. He signed with his expensive Morn blank pen. You did the right thing, he said. He handed the folder back and walked toward the stage. He never noticed the title, Affidavit of Sole Financial Responsibility. I stepped aside and photographed the signature page. I sent it to Michael. He sent it to our lawyer. Our lawyer forwarded it to FIRS and EFCC. Minutes later, my father stood under the spotlight. Tonight, he announced proudly, we expand the Peters Foundation with a major investment. Before he finished, the large screen behind him changed. Government seal. Asset freeze notice. The room went silent. Security officers entered. Charles Peters, one officer said. You are under investigation for financial crimes. He turned toward me. She tricked me. But the handcuffs closed. Cameras flashed. The empire cracked. And for the first time in my life, I was not invisible. The sound of the handcuffs closing around my father's wrists was small, soft, almost gentle. But to me, it sounded louder than the music that had filled the ballroom minutes before. The room had gone completely silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. You could hear someone's glass trembling against a plate. My father looked confused at first. Not afraid. Confused. As if reality had made a mistake. Do you know who I am? He demanded. The EFCC officer did not raise his voice. Yes, sir. We do. They took the microphone from his hand. The cameras did not stop flashing. My father's tuxedo still looked perfect. His hair still neat. But something in his eyes had cracked. The shine was gone. He looked at me. And for the first time in my life, I did not look away. She forged it, he shouted. She manipulated the paperwork. But the officer held up the signed affidavit. Sir, you signed as sole financial trustee and accepted responsibility for all listed entities. His own signature stared back at him. Bold. Confident. The same way he always signed documents. He had not read it. Because he never believed I was capable of outsmarting him. As they led him away, the crowd slowly began to whisper. The great Charles Peters. In handcuffs. I thought it was over. It was not. Michael squeezed my hand. Let's leave, he said quietly. We turned toward the exit when someone grabbed my arm. Daniel. His face was red. His eyes wild. You did this, he hissed. He dragged us toward a private VIP suite down the hallway. The music from the ballroom felt far away now. He slammed the door shut. You ruined everything, he shouted. It was already ruined, I said. He laughed bitterly. You think you're smart. You think you've won. His hand moved quickly. I saw the flash of metal. A serrated steak knife from the dinner table. My heart jumped into my throat. This was no longer business. This was fear. Raw fear. He lunged forward. Michael stepped in front of me. Daniel, drop it, he said firmly. But Daniel did not listen. He moved fast. Michael caught his wrist. There was a sharp twist. A loud crack. Daniel screamed. The knife fell to the marble floor and slid away. Seconds later, Security officers burst through the door. Daniel collapsed, not crying from pain, but from defeat. For the first time, he looked small. Not golden. Not powerful. Just small. By morning, Lagos had exploded. Every newspaper. Every blog. Every television channel. Business titan arrested at gala. EFCC freezes Peter's assets. Clips of him shouting replayed everywhere. Friends who had laughed at my wedding now avoided eye contact. Pastors who had praised him now released careful statements. The Ikoyi mansion gates were locked by government officials. Bank accounts frozen. Properties listed for investigation. I stayed home. I did not answer calls. I did not celebrate. Because victory did not feel loud. It felt quiet. Heavy. Michael sat beside me on our small sofa. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded slowly. I did not feel happy. I felt free. A week later, I went to see him. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it with my own eyes. The detention center smelled like sweat and concrete. They led me to a small room with metal bars. He walked in wearing plain clothes. No tuxedo. No cameras. No applause. He looked older. "You've made a big mistake," he said immediately. "No," I replied softly. "You did." He leaned closer. "You think this money will protect you? You think they won't come for you too?" "The account was clean," I said. "Grandpa never touched illegal funds." His jaw tightened. "You betrayed your family." I held his gaze. "You betrayed us first." For once, he had nothing to say. The small house in Badagry sat near the ocean. It had cracked walls. A leaking roof. Wild grass everywhere. But it was mine. Michael and I drove there one Saturday morning. The air smelled of salt and fish. I unlocked the door slowly. Dust filled the room. "This is where he used to sit," I whispered, remembering Grandpa Samuel's quiet smile. We fixed the roof. Cleared the weeds. Painted the walls white. For the first time in my life, I owned something without fear. No one could threaten it. No one could laugh at it. Daniel took a plea deal. He cooperated with investigators. He gave them access to emails and offshore account details. He avoided prison. But he lost everything. No inheritance. No foundation role. No mansion. He called me once. "I hope you're happy," he said. "I hope you learn," I replied. He hung up. I did not feel hatred anymore. Just distance. The courtroom was quiet. My father sat at the defense table. His lawyers argued loudly. But the documents were clear. The signed affidavit. The linked accounts. The recorded speech from the gala where he publicly claimed ownership. He had confessed without knowing. The judge denied bail. Assets remained frozen. The empire officially crumbled. I watched from the back row. Not smiling. Not crying. Just watching. The bank finalized the trust transfer. 18.7 billion naira. Legally mine. When the manager handed me the final documents, his hands were respectful. "What will you do with it?" he asked politely. "Let it grow," I answered. Money had destroyed my father. I refused to let it change me. I remained at the hospital. Still working night shifts. Still holding hands of patients in pain. Because money is not purpose. It is protection. One evening on the porch of the cottage, I burned a copy of the affidavit. The original was with the authorities. This copy was just paper. The flame curled its edges. Smoke rose into the air. Michael sat beside me. "It's over," he said. I watched the paper turn to ash. "It was over the day he dropped that passbook," I replied. Because that was the day I stopped being afraid. The ocean was calm that morning. Waves rolled gently onto the shore. I sat on the porch with coffee in my hand. The cottage was quiet. No shouting. No humiliation. No audience. Just peace. People still talk about the fall of Charles Peters. They say it was dramatic. They say it was shocking. They say it was tragic. But they don't know the real story. The real story began long before the handcuffs. It began in a study where a little girl scrubbed whiskey from the floor. It began in silence. And it ended the day that girl realized she was never trash. She was just waiting. And when the time came, she chose not revenge. She chose freedom. After the court hearing slowed down, life became strangely normal. Too normal. I returned to the hospital in Soyulia. The smell of antiseptic. The beeping machines. The rush of stretchers through narrow hallways. Blood does not care about wealth. Pain does not respect status. I wore my scrubs. I tied my hair back. I moved from bed to bed like I always had. Some colleagues had seen the news. Some pretended they had not. One nurse pulled me aside during break. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I thought about the gala. The handcuffs. The knife. The courtroom. Yes, I answered honestly. Because I was. For the first time in my life, my father's shadow was not following me into every room. The money sat untouched in investment accounts. Managed carefully. Quietly. It was not flashy. It did not scream for attention. It waited. Just like I had waited. At night, Michael and I would sit at our small dining table and plan slowly. No sudden moves. No public celebration. Power is strongest when it is calm. And I had learned that lesson from watching my father misuse it. 2 weeks later, a black SUV stopped outside our apartment. I watched from the window. 2 men stepped out in tailored suits. I knew that look. Investors. Former partners of my father. They had ignored me all my life. Now they wanted meetings. Michael opened the door slightly. "Yes. We would like to speak with Mrs. Peters regarding future opportunities," one man said smoothly. Future opportunities. They smelled money. I stepped forward. "I'm not interested," I said calmly. They looked surprised. "You may not understand the scale of what you now control," the other man said. "I understand very well." They left quickly. That was when I realized something important. The world does not change because you win. It changes because people now see value in you. But I did not want to become another version of my father. So I stayed small. On purpose. The court sessions stretched on for months. Evidence piled up. Offshore accounts. False tax reports. Fake foundation documents. My father lawyers tried everything. They suggested I manipulated him. They suggested he was confused. But the signed affidavit stood strong. And so did the recording from the gala where he publicly claimed ownership of funds. Each time I sat in that courtroom, I felt less like a victim and more like a witness to history. He stopped looking at me. Not because he hated me. Because he finally understood I was not weak. And that hurt him more. Daniel moved into a small rented flat in Lekki Phase 2. No drivers. No security guards. No luxury. He called me one evening. "Do you ever feel guilty?" he asked. "For what?" I replied. "For ending it." I was silent for a moment. "It was already ending," I said. "You just refused to see it." He sighed. "I don't know how to live like this." That was the first honest thing he had ever said to me. "You learn," I answered. And I meant it. Because I had learned how to live without applause. Without approval. Without fear. He would have to learn too. One afternoon, the branch director from First National Bank requested a private meeting. We met in Marina again. "You are in a unique position," he said carefully. "You could expand into real estate. Infrastructure. Even international portfolios." He showed me projections. Charts. Growth curves. Big numbers. I listened. Then I shook my head. "I don't want an empire," I said. He looked confused. Most people would. But I had seen what empire does. It consumes. Instead, I asked about setting up long-term investments for education and healthcare initiatives. Quiet things. Lasting things. He nodded slowly. That day, I began building something different. The day of the final sentencing arrived. The courtroom was packed. My father stood as the judge read the ruling. Multiple counts of financial fraud. Tax evasion. Asset misrepresentation. The sentence was heavy. Years behind bars. Asset seizure confirmed. No applause. No anger. Just finality. He did not look at me as he was led away. He looked forward. For once in his life, he had no audience to perform for. That night, I could not sleep. I lay beside Michael listening to the fan hum softly. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. I thought carefully. "No," I said. But I also did not feel joy. I felt closure. There is a difference. Revenge burns hot and fast. Closure is slow and cool. I did not destroy him. He destroyed himself. I simply stopped protecting him. And that was enough. One evening at the hospital, a young girl was brought in after an accident. Her father stood outside the emergency room, shaking. He looked helpless. Small. Afraid. I helped stabilize her. When she was safe, I stepped outside to speak to him. He grabbed my hands. "Thank you," he said, tears in his eyes. In that moment, I realized something powerful. Real strength is not loud. It is quiet service. Not microphones. Not spotlights. Just showing up. That was the life I wanted. Months passed. The cottage in Badagry changed. Fresh paint. New windows. A small garden. Michael planted flowers along the walkway. I planted herbs. We sat on the porch most evenings watching the ocean turn orange at sunset. No shouting. No humiliation. No fear. Just waves. I sometimes thought about that champagne bucket. About the ice cutting my skin. That was the last time I ever felt small. Because pain can wake you up. And I had finally awakened. People still whisper about the fall of Charles Peters. Some say it was betrayal. Some say it was destiny. Some say I was heartless. They do not know the full story. They did not see the study floor when I was 12. They did not hear the quiet threats. They did not feel the cold of that champagne bucket. Power is not money. Power is not fear. Power is the ability to walk away without looking back. And that night at my wedding, when I stepped out of that hall with a ruined dress and a wet passbook in my hand, that was the moment I became powerful. The rest was just paperwork. 3 months after the sentencing, I received the first letter from my father. The envelope was thin. The handwriting was sharp and familiar. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, there was no apology. No regret. Only blame. He wrote that I had embarrassed the family. That I had destroyed his name. That I had let outsiders humiliate him. He said I would one day understand what I had done. I folded the letter slowly. For years, his words had controlled my heartbeat. A single sentence from him could make me feel worthless. But this time, my chest did not tighten. I did not feel small. I placed the letter in a drawer and closed it. Some people do not change when they lose everything. They only change when they look inward. And my father had never learned how to do that. The investment accounts were growing steadily. I met quietly with financial advisors, not to build towers or buy headlines, but to create something lasting. We set up a small healthcare support fund. No big press release. No gala dinner. Just anonymous hospital bill support for families who could not pay. The first time we covered the surgery cost of a young boy whose mother was a cleaner, I sat in my car and cried. Not from sadness. From peace. This was what money should do. Protect. Heal. Not dominate. Michael watched me carefully during those months. "You're lighter," he said one evening. "I am," I replied. Because I was no longer carrying the weight of trying to prove myself. I had nothing left to prove. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel showed up at the cottage. He looked different. Thinner. Quieter. He stood awkwardly near the gate. "I just wanted to see you," he said. We sat on the porch. For a long time, neither of us spoke. "I never noticed what he did to you," he said finally. I looked at him. "You noticed," I answered gently. "You just benefited from it." He swallowed hard. "That's true." It was the closest we had ever come to honesty. He did not ask for money. He did not ask for help. He only asked for a chance to try again. I nodded. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to carry bitterness. Lagos never forgets a scandal. Even months later, I would sometimes hear whispers when I entered certain places. That's her. The daughter. The one who exposed him. Some said I was ruthless. Some said I was brave. The truth was simpler. I was tired. Tired of being silent. Tired of being small. One afternoon at a charity event, one I attended quietly, a woman approached me. "You embarrassed your father publicly," she said softly. "Family issues should stay private." I looked at her calmly. "So should fraud," I replied. She had nothing else to say. Another letter arrived. This one was shorter. He asked if I would visit again. I thought about it for days. Finally, I went. The prison visiting room felt colder than before. He looked older. Smaller. There were no threats this time. "No matter what happened," he said quietly, "I built everything from nothing." I studied his face. "And then you destroyed it," I answered gently. For the first time, he did not argue. He only looked tired. I left feeling something unexpected. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just distance. One evening, a heavy storm hit Badagry. The wind howled. Rain hit the windows hard. For a moment, I felt a strange fear, like something might be taken away again. Michael came outside with me onto the covered porch. The ocean was wild. But the cottage stood firm. The roof held. The walls did not shake. "It's strong," he said. I realized then that this house was more than wood and paint. It was proof. I had survived worse storms. And I was still standing. A large international firm reached out through a mutual contact. They offered partnership opportunities. Expansion. Global recognition. The kind of position my father would have killed for. I read the proposal carefully. Then I declined. Michael raised an eyebrow. "No curiosity?" he asked. "Curiosity, yes," I said. "But not hunger." Hunger for power had destroyed my father. I would not let it touch me. My life was enough. My work was enough. Peace was enough. You was enough. A new nurse joined our hospital. She was quiet. Careful. Always apologizing. One evening, I found her crying in the supply room after a doctor shouted at her. "I'm useless," she whispered. Those words hit me deeply. I knelt in front of her. "You are not useless," I said firmly. "You are learning." I saw myself in her. And I realized something powerful. Breaking a cycle is not loud. It happens in small rooms. In quiet encouragement. In choosing not to repeat cruelty. I returned to the drawer where I had kept my father's first letter. I read it again. The words felt distant now. Like they belonged to someone else's story. I burned both letters in a small metal bowl on the porch. The smoke rose slowly into the evening air. Michael watched without speaking. "I don't hate him anymore," I said softly. "I know," he replied. "Hate ties you to the person who hurt you." I was no longer tied to anyone. Not by fear. Not by anger. Not by money. Sometimes I think back to the bank vault. To the moment the director turned that paper toward me. 18.7 billion naira. People think that was the turning point. It wasn't. The turning point was the champagne bucket. The ice. The laughter. The moment I chose to walk out instead of beg. The money did not make me powerful. It only revealed what was already inside me. Now I sit on the porch of the cottage as the sun sets over the ocean. The waves move slowly. The air smells of salt and peace. Michael sits beside me. The fund is stable. The hospital work continues. Daniel is rebuilding his life quietly. My father serves his sentence. And I remain who I have always been. Not trash. Not invisible. Not small. Just a woman who finally understood that freedom is not given. It is claimed. And when the vault of my life opened, I did not find revenge inside. I found myself. The end. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this story. If this journey moved you, touched your heart, or made you see love and courage differently, Please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. New inspiring stories are waiting for you here every day. Stories that heal, surprise, and stay with.